What up, what up, what up? It's Ibn Webb, Ib Webb, Quran, some here, official thanks thing I got going on here. Essex County All Day Edition of note. This is a conversation or me just sitting back, taking in information from Lawrence Hamm, Mr. Hamm here. Life well lived, service, being a father, everything else that just tied into it here. The accolades, the achievements are endless here. I was hoping to just have this out right after he won, but I know unfortunately he came up a little short as far as the election back in June. However, not short in a whole lot of other people's eyes here as far as the things that he have done, people who've modeled their lives after him or looked up to him for guidance or what have you here. Mr. Ham, I just wanted to say thank you just for that opportunity you gave me, as you were on that track, to get up in office here, just the perseverance, everything that you've done. You know, just wanted to say thank you. But let me just sit back. Hopefully those who watch this can enjoy, just listening to your walk, your journey, what have you here, also. I want to say just thank you again. I probably thanked you a million times, but thanks. And we're going to get to it. Hold tight.
Hello, Mr. Ham. Can you hear me?
Hello, sir. I apologize. I took some cold medication and it knocked me out, man. I'm sorry.
No, no problem. If you want to lay down, we can reschedule. It's up to you.
No, I'm not gonna do that to you. We're gonna do this. I mean,
No, if you're not feeling well, trust me, I know that feeling. If you need to just cool out,
no, let's go forward.
okay. Okay, no problem. Now, thank you, Mr. Ham, for just for joining me here. My name is Ibn Webb. I know Val has been great through all of this as far as communicating myself and also with you here to make this happen here. I just wanted to say, one, this is extremely an honor for me to just have you this opportunity here, just to conversate here and just talking wherever the conversation it goes here. But like I said, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking time out just to talk with me a little bit here. Just a little bit about this here. I something I started a couple of years ago here. It was on the back end of things being closed up when everything was shut down as far as pandemic or what have you here. And I just wanted to do something in regards to just I'm a Jersey guy, born in Newark, raised in Orange, so just all the oranges, Newark's, everything else down there. And I just wanted to do something as far as just to have, some conversation with those that I've heard of and those that actually I know in regards to family members or what have you here. So for me, just to, just to hear your name and some of the things that you've done, you lived a life and continue to live a life that a lot of us probably dream of here. So just wanted to again, convo, nothing heavy, nothing crazy here. We're not trying to make these TMZs and gossip stuff here. I just wanted to hear a little bit about your walk, if that's okay.
Brother, we can go in whatever direction you want.
Oh no, thank you, sir. Here, just a little bit. So originally, where you from as far as childhood wise? Where'd you grow up?
Well, originally I was born in Washington, D.C., but as a newborn infant, I was brought to Newark, New Jersey, and raised in Newark, New Jersey. My earliest memories of my childhood was at number 5 Ridgewood Avenue, which is the corner of Ridgewood and Avon. It looks much different there now. They built some new housing there. I think it was back in maybe the 80s, the kind of low rise, projects. And but when when I was a child, right on the corner of Ridgewood and Avon was the Ridgewood Bar. That was, and I lived next to that building. I lived at number 5, and across the street was Esther's Restaurant. And we call it Irvin Turner Boulevard now, but it was called Belmont Avenue then, and there used to be a tasty bread factory there that used to give away free little loaves of bread for a penny. There was the National Theater. There's a movie theater there, believe it or not, that my mother took me to. So That was from about 1953 to 1957. And then my father passed away in 1957. And my mother went to live with her parents, also in the Central Ward, but they lived on 12th Street,
Okay.
527 South 12th Street, between 16th and 18th Avenue, one block down from West Side Park. And I was there from 1957 until 1977, until that house burned down. There was an electrical fire and burned the house to the ground. It was a three-story house. In fact, there's still houses on that street like that, like the one I lived in, but they're still standing. My house, the house I lived in, we lived on the second floor. It burned down. I went to South 17th Street School, K through 8, and I was supposed to go to West Side High School, which is where I wanted to go. But yeah, I wanted to go where my friends went.
Rough Rider, I think, correct?
Rough Rider.
My
Rough
mom,
Rider.
my mom is a West Side alum, so yeah.
That's right. But I got in some trouble in the 8th grade, and I got thrown out of school. And when they finally brought me back, there was I think, an effort to kind of rehabilitate me, And this was in the spring of 1967. Earlier in the fall of 1966, my teacher, her name was Miss Ryerson. She knew that I knew how to read music because when I was a little boy, I asked my grandfather to get me guitar lessons. And there was a guy that made signs. He had a sign making business. He was on the corner of might have been 6th Street and 16th Avenue, right around in there. So he painted signs by day, hand painted signs. But in the evenings, he gave music lessons in the back of his shop. So my grandfather took me down there to get guitar lessons so I could read music, and so I didn't take the test for Arts High in the fall because I didn't want to go there. But then my teacher, she was determined. She made me go and take the test in the spring. And to my surprise, because I didn't think I was going to pass the test, but to my surprise, I passed all the tests because it's not just music. It was like math and reading and everything else. And I passed, and I ended up going to Arts High School, and I went there from 1967 to 1971. What is it, 9 through 12. And I grew up in the Black community in the heart of the Central Ward. My father, as I said, he passed away when I was 4 years old. But there was a man who sought the attention of my mother. His name was Jake Hughes.
Okay.
And Jake Hughes sold coal in the wintertime and watermelons in the summertime.
Look at that. Yeah.
and I worked for Jake Hughes. See, a lot of folks are not old enough to remember, like everybody now, most folks have like electric or gas heat. Some people still have heating oil. They get that oil and it goes in a tank. But in the old days, most people, poor people, had coal heat. They had a coal furnace in the basement and then had what they call a coal bin. And if you look at some of these houses, like these 3-story houses, if you look at their driveways, you'll see a little window. The window is like right at the ground level. That was a window that would open for the coal chute. And when I worked on JQ's truck, I used to take the chute and put it in that window. And then I would shovel the coal on the chute, and the coal would go
Shoot,
down into
yeah.
the coal bin. I couldn't have been more than probably 7 years old, 7 to 8.
Okay.
And then in the summertime, he sold watermelons. And he would pick me up early in the morning, wherever he was coming from, to get them watermelons. And he would park his truck on what was then Belmont Avenue,
Mm.
right near the corner. I would say probably near the corner of West Kenny and Belmont Avenue.
Okay.
And we would sit there. And in the old days, that's when the projects was still there, Hayes Home Project.
The Hayes, yes.
And people would stick their head out the window and say, "Send me up a watermelon." And Jake Hughes would give the watermelon almost big as I was. And I had to carry many times, a lot of times I could get on the elevator, but there were times when them elevators be out.
They were
And
working, yeah. Yeah.
I'd have to carry that watermelon sometimes 13 flights,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But that was my childhood. And, that might sound unusual to some people, but as a kid, it was fun to me. I wanted to work,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Jake Hughes was the first one that gave me a quote unquote job,
Yeah.
and taught me how to count my money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That man he probably didn't have an 8th grade education, but he had a successful business.
That's right.
You know, he
One
had
of
a
one of
successful
many,
business.
I'm sure. Yeah, one of many, I'm
Yeah,
sure. Yes.
yes. I don't know what happened to brother Jake Hughes, but he had an impact on my early years. My mother, I was an only child,
Okay.
and my mother, in her wisdom, always sought to expose me to positive male role models.
Mm.
And this was before the Black Power and all of that.
Okay.
This is when we were still calling each other colored.
Oh.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't even use the word Negro. People say because that's what we were referred to as back in them days, Negroes. But in my house, all them people, because we lived in a second floor apartment, grandmother, grandfather, grandmother's sister, my mother, myself. We had a cousin Ralph lived with us too. They was all from Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how people referred to each other down there. And that's how they that's how my family referred to each other up here. And so my mother went out of her way to expose me to men, who were positive, who
Yeah.
worked,
Mm-hmm.
men who worked, they always worked. Um, uh, some were like independent business contractor, and so on and so forth. But I always had positive role models, including my scoutmaster, because we had the Boy Scouts at South
Yes.
17th Street School.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I had a black scoutmaster. His name was Richard Crooms,
Okay.
Mr. Crooms. And it was Crooms that took me on my first camping trip right up
Mm.
here to the South Mountain Reservation.
And it
We
was a
used to
whole different world away, right?
brother. We used to ride up South Orange Avenue.
Yeah. Yeah.
The black community was before the Parkway. Then you go under the overpass, and then you're in Valesburg, and it
Mm-hmm.
was white, but you keep going up
Mm-hmm.
past Seton Hall University, and then it was another world, man, the way them
Yeah.
people lived. And we got into the mountains with these people had beautiful homes and then finally we get to the reservation and we camped out there. And I know people may have different opinions about scouting, but scouting was a positive experience for me.
Oh,
My
many life
scout,
skills. Yeah.
yes, my scoutmaster, Mr. Crooms, was also a martial arts instructor.
Mm,
He taught Goshi Shun style karate, which he learned when he was stationed in Korea in the early 1950s during the Korean War.
mhm.
And so he was like, 2 or 3 in 1. He was a scoutmaster,
Yeah.
taught us all about camping, but he taught martial arts. He did martial arts classes right in the gym of South 17th Street School after school.
Mhm.
And so he had a positive impact on me. I mean, my first serious attempts at cooking, believe it or not, I learned from him.
Mm,
I learned from him. Not only did he take us on camping trips up to the South Mountain Reservation, he also took us on field trips to New York City.
yeah.
I had never been to New York City, without my mother
Mhm.
until I was part of Troop 14 at South 7. He took us, we go to the museums and all these places. It was very much fun, brother. So that's my early childhood. Then suddenly, July of 1967,
Mhm.
it was a summer night. I think it might have been July 12th. I was across the street on 12th Street, but I was across the street from my house at my friend Willie C. He was from down south, and we called him Willie C.
Yeah.
We was at Willie C's house having a red light party. I don't know if people
Yeah,
remember,
yeah, 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 yeah,
you know? And when I say red light, I mean a real red. Somebody took the regular bulb out and put the red bulb in there.
yeah. You
You know,
partying, yeah, yeah,
man, we was uh what did we call it? Grinding back in those days,
yeah. I'm sure it got a little interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, listening to Smokey Robinson,
Mm,
Ooh Baby Baby,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and all of a sudden somebody ran upstairs and they said, Springfield Avenue is on fire.
yeah,
And man, we all ran downstairs to go down Springfield. It was only 2 blocks away, 18th Avenue and Springfield Avenue.
mhm,
My mother was on the porch of our building
mhm.
across the street. When I came out, get your behind up these
Yeah,
stairs. And maybe she saved my life by doing that. And that was the first night of the rebellion. I'm sure you know the story, how it started with the beating of the cab driver. I lived about a mile as the crow flies from where they arrested him
mm,
at the corner of Fairmount and Springfield Avenue. Only about a mile. I could have walked there. So when the rebellion started, it started down in Hayes Homes because in the center of Hayes Homes was the 17th Avenue Police Precinct. And that precinct had a notorious reputation. Black people went in standing up and carried out laying down. It was notorious for killing people. And they beat this brother so people could look out of their windows and look down and see people being dragged into the police station. And they saw Smith. And the rumor got out that Smith had been killed. So there was civil rights organizations in Newark at the time,
mhm.
like CORE, Congress of Racial Equality, of course, the NAACP, many other organizations. Newark was a city of the movement. Like some of everybody was there. Black Panther Party. I'm sorry, brother.
No problem.
Black Panther Party, Nation of Islam,
Mm-hmm.
Amiri Baraka's organization, which in 1967 was, I think, still called United Brothers, NAACP Corps. I believe the Moorish Science Temple was founded in Newark. Noble Drew Ali. You know, it's interesting when you read the history of Newark. There's a book out. I don't have it in front of me here. Nation Within a Nation by a brother named Kamosi Woodard, who was in Amiri Baraka's organization, Committee for Unified Newark. United Brothers became the Committee for Unified Newark. And he wrote a book. He takes it all the way back to the 19th century and talks about the development of black political power from almost from the end of the 19th century all the way up. He takes it all the way up to about 1973, post the National Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana. But so there were all kind of organizations, all kinds in Newark, you know. And so in response to what people thought was the death of Smith, there was a protest in front of the police precinct. And at a certain point, the police rolled out and rushed the crowd and started beating people. And that's what really set it off. You know, it set it off. Smith was not dead, but he was badly beaten. He was beaten to like inches of his life.
Mm-hmm.
So we on the porch. It's July. I don't think we had air conditioning in our house. So we had a porch. In fact, the porch door was in my room. I had a little room that you had to go through to get to the porch door.
Okay.
And we would sit out on the porch in the hot summer night. And all of a sudden you could see the rebellion beginning to unfold in our community. Because back in those days, business was more decentralized. Like now we talk of a business district, and that's for the most part downtown Newark.
Mm-hmm.
Or we might think of, and you would be correct, Springfield Avenue had a lot of businesses. South Orange Avenue had a lot of businesses. But I'm gonna tell you, almost every avenue had a lot of business. 16th Avenue, you could buy everything you needed and not leave the neighborhood. Literally 5 doors from my house at the intersection of Springfield and South Orange Avenue, grocery store in one corner, vegetable store. I bet you people don't even think that there used to be a store just for vegetables
So
and fruits.
vegetables, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
vegetable store, you know, gas station on the other corner, candy store on the corner, 2 and 3 different laundry businesses, you know, clothing stores, shoe store, drugstore, restaurants, everything. Like we didn't know anything about no mall back then. And what we didn't get from the stores in our community, because Newark was very segregated. It was a segregated city. And in the early years prior to 1960, Black people didn't go downtown that much. You know where we went? We went on Prince Street, whatever we couldn't get in the neighborhood. Now you go to Prince Street now, there's nothing there. I think there's a ball field there, right? A
Mm-hmm.
baseball field and some basketball courts there. But then it used to be packed with stores, all
Mm-hmm.
kind of stores.
Yeah.
We would go shopping there. So anyway, what I'm trying to make is that this uprising began to unfold and the people began to loot the stores on 16th Avenue. Right across from our house was a building that's still there. My house is not there, but the building across the street
Mm-hmm.
is there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bus garage now. But when I was a kid in 1967, it was a dry goods warehouse. People looted that warehouse. Cornflakes everywhere, you know, because that was like when you bought in bulk, like if you had a grocery store, you would come there and buy huge boxes of smaller boxes of cornflakes. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
50-pound bags of sugar and all that. And this looting is going on. They're looting the stores on 16th Avenue. And I'm asking, and the sirens are going and the fire engines are going. And I asked my grandfather, I was like, why is this happening? And it was in the summer of 1967 that my grandfather had my first serious discussion about race and racism in America.
Okay.
Now, I wasn't privy to all the conversations in my house. I don't know what the adults talked about. I came from a regular family. I don't even think my folks was NAACP members, to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
They was working people.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was what was called a boiler man. He worked at nights. He worked at a factory in Bloomfield, and he ran the huge furnaces
Okay.
at this factory that made cardboard. That it was like recycling before there was recycling. They would bring in all this, cardboard and, churn it up, mix it up, and then turn out these huge sheets of cardboard, which would then go to another factory where they make it into boxes.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandfather worked there at night. My mother was a seamstress. She worked in the cleaners around the corner. And they were regular working people, and just talked about regular things. So all this upheaval going on. So my grandfather had with me what I can remember is my first conversation about race. And my grandfather talked about his life in the South. He talked about his life in the Army. My grandfather was a World War I vet who had been to Europe, been to France, talked about the racism in the military, the racism he experienced in Europe. And I was like, wow, I didn't know about racism, everybody looked,
Yeah.
I mean, I know we were different, but in a child's mind, you know what I'm saying? South 17th Street School was integrated before integration from 57. I think my class was, and as each year went on, because if you could look at the class pictures, they used to take class
You start
pictures.
seeing the changes a little bit.
You could see the change, brother.
Yeah.
Black kids was a minority a small number, my kindergarten class. And the closer we got to 8th grade, the blacker them class pictures became.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, in 1967, I believe my graduating class, 8th grade class, was the last class that we had white kids in. And I'm gonna tell the truth, we got along pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people as kids, I never heard. Did they probably use the N-word? They probably did when they went home.
Mm-hmm.
But around us, I never heard the N-word. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was like, were you a good ball player?
Yeah.
Could you play basketball? Could you play softball? Were you good at sports?
Mm-hmm.
And but brother, that I'm gonna stop so you can. I know you want to make some comments. That rebellion of 1967 was a major turning point in my life. It was the beginning of the seeds, the early seeds of social consciousness were planted in 1967.
So that summer night, and then even the aftermath of everything, you kind of, just looking back, you kind of knew, as to your point you just mentioned, that planted the seed as far as what you've done throughout your life, throughout your life here.
Right, that was beginning. Then the next thing that happened, I didn't even think school was going to start. That rebellion was so cataclysmic. I actually believed, I said, there's no way we gonna have school.
Hmm.
I was about 13 at the time.
And
Don't you know?
you're transitioning into high school at this point.
Right,
Mm.
right. I just graduated from the 8th grade by the skin of my teeth. I think I told you earlier, I got thrown out of school in the 8th grade. I remember my mother, I was suspended for about a week. She had to bring me back. And I remember my mother crying at my father's funeral when I was 4. My mother cried harder in front of that principal. His name, believe it or not, his name was Mr. King. He was white. He was the principal of South 17th Street School. My mother begged that man to let me graduate.
Mm.
That moment left a permanent mark on my mind. I had never seen my mother cry like that. Mr. King told my mother, he said, "Miss Hamm, your son is a common hoodlum." That's a quote. I'll never forget those words.
Mm.
Said, "Your son is a common hoodlum, and we shouldn't even let him graduate." And my mother begged that man to let me graduate. That was also a turning point, and I did graduate. And then I started Arts High in the fall of '67, just a month after rebellion, month and a half, first week of September. So they have a student orientation at Arts High School, right?
Mm-hmm.
Arts High didn't have more than about 700 kids in it. So everybody could fit into the auditorium. The student body, the teachers, everybody. Student orientation, teachers talk, principal talks. So they gonna let the student government president talk. They didn't call him president. At that time, Arts High had a student government, and the leader of the student government was called the mayor.
Okay.
The mayor of Arts High, right? Is a white boy. His name was David Hammond. I don't know if you remember a TV show called A Man from Uncle.
Man
I
from
don't
Uncle.
know.
Okay.
Uh,
Nah, a little before me.
right, right. Well, anyway, uh, it's 2 guys. They're partners and they're spies for the United States. One is American, and the other one is Russian. His name was Ilya Kuryakin. In the story, that was his name.
Okay.
But David Hammond looked just like Ilya Kuryakin. He had the blonde hair, it looked like a kind of Beatles style haircut, you know. So he comes up to the podium. The principal says, "David, I want you to talk about the student council and the upcoming Halloween party and the UNICEF collection." This is 1967. David comes to the podium. He started to talk, but he's not talking about UNICEF and Halloween, student government. Guess what he starts talking about? He starts talking about the war in Vietnam. Now, I didn't know where Vietnam was.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know nothing about. The only thing I knew about Vietnam was the Green Berets. The special forces
Yes. Yes.
in the army.
Yes.
Because now, why did I know this? Because when I was in like maybe the 6th grade or so, not the 7th and not the 8th, it's more like 5th or 6th grade, there was a very popular song in America called the Green Berets. And they made us sing it in school. Fighting soldiers from the sky, fearless men that jump and die, 100 men will test today, but only 3 will wear the Green Beret. So I knew Green Berets had something to do with Vietnam, but beyond that, I ain't know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
David starts talking about the war in Vietnam in front of the whole school. The principal gets up, says, "David, don't talk about Vietnam. Talk about the student council." David keeps talking about Vietnam. the principal goes over and tries to physically drag him from the podium.
Mm.
And in front of the whole school, the student government president and the principal are up there fighting on the stage.
Mm.
Now, I don't know if David graduated or not, but I knew that after that, I said, I think I want to join the student council. You know, I didn't know nothing about Vietnam, but that was the first time I had ever seen a young person try to talk about like a serious social issue,
Yeah.
you know, and that was also a moment, you know, in my consciousness. Go ahead, brother. I know you wanna. I could. Don't let me just go on and
Oh
on.
no, no, no. Like I said, I just soak it all up here. I mean, again, I know you're just sharing the early beginnings of, your journey as far as, whether it was social justice, politics, what have you there. So even that shift going into arts here, did that just give you more of a craving to even to learn and to educate? I mean, as far as did that start in high school, starting to develop that sense of, hey, let me want to learn more about what's going on in the world, even locally, or just in general, anything I can put my hands on
Yeah,
or
yeah.
watch.
Well, I'm gonna tell the truth, right? For the most part, not totally, but
Okay.
for the most part, our school curriculum was really devoid of anything political. It wasn't until my senior year that I was able to take a class called Humanities.
Okay.
It was an advanced college course, and it was taught by Mrs. Rich. And it was in that class that I was exposed to, for the first time, books by Black authors. But it really wasn't that, something else happened in 67. Remember, I told you I got thrown out of school and then they brought me back
Can I ask if you care to share? How come you got thrown out of school?
because we had a little gang
Okay.
on 18th Avenue, and the gang leader, he got expelled. For what, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know why he got expelled. We all up there in the playground, and somebody says, uh, our brother uh, got expelled. So we all mad. We go across the street because, West Side Park faces South 17th Street School. So we stand up on the wall that faces South 17th Street School, and we start throwing rocks at the school
Okay.
and broke out school windows. And the next day, they came to the boys' health class and they began to take people out of class one by one. Like they was taking people out and then people wasn't coming back in. One by one, because they were trying to find out who windows, because a lot of windows were broke.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody they told who was there, and all us that were told on, we all got thrown out of school. That's why I got thrown out of school. Now, the amazing thing is that if that had happened today, they would have took me straight to the police, but my mother would have had to come pick me up from the police station, not from school. That was an act of vandalism.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting, I never saw a policeman. If they did an investigation, I had been expelled and I was out until it was time for me to come back. And like I said, my mother begged me back in school. And that was it as far as I was concerned.
Okay.
And all of us, or I think all of us that were involved, we graduated. But something happened just before graduation. One day, class homeroom was dismissed. And Miss Ryerson said, Larry, stay after class. And I stayed. She said, we going downtown. I said, going downtown?
Yeah, yeah.
I ain't never went nowhere with a teacher. This teacher was white.
Mm.
Going downtown. I said, I got to ask my mother. She said, we don't have time. Now, if she's done that today, she might have got fired. We got in her car and we went to Bam Burgers.
Yes.
The building is still there. That's
Yeah.
that big brown building
I know what
on
you're talking
Market,
about.
right, between Washington and Halsey. So we get to Bam Burgers. We go up on the elevator to the top floor. On the top floor is where they sold toys and books. Now, I had been to Bam Burgers before, but not with my teacher, with my mother. But there was a big commotion on the top floor. The first time I ever saw television cameras, like for real, television cameras were there. They were a lot bigger and a lot heavier, but, people would carry them, It's a big crowd. Miss Ryerson, she got me by the hand. She go over to the table. She gets a book. She pushed her way through the crowd with me. And she put the book on the table. She asked the man, she said, will you sign this book for my student? And the man signed the book. Guess whose name it was? Jesse Owens.
Mm.
You know who Jesse Owens is?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Yes, Jesse Owens, who was the famous Black athlete that defeated Hitler's super race.
Yes.
At the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. And he signed that book. I didn't know who Jesse Owens was until that day. My teacher told me. Mm-hmm. And then I read the book. Eventually, I didn't read it all that day. Over time, as I got older, I read the book. And it was his autobiography that he signed. Now, why would this white teacher, probably wasn't even from New Jersey. In my mind, I think she was from Connecticut.
Okay.
But she lived in Newark. She told me where she lived. She lived at the Colonnades.
Colonnades, yeah.
Because back in the day, that was, you was hoi polloi, you was the joint if you lived in the Colonnades. You lived in the Colonnades. She lived in, imagine that. The teacher lived in Newark. And what would make that white woman take me to see Jesse Owens? I often think about that. Obviously, first of all, what's apparent is that she knew who Jesse Owens was. She knew he was famous. But why would she go to those lengths to take a Black kid who was not any relation to her downtown to meet Jesse Owens?
Yeah.
That was another important consciousness kind of event. And then the thing that really set it off, there were two teacher strikes. One was in 1970 and one was in 71. By 1970, remember I told you the student government leader was called the mayor. So the vice president was called the deputy mayor. So by 1970, I'm deputy mayor of the student council. And there's a strike. Don't ask me how or why, I don't know. But they said all student council representatives come to B13. That was a classroom on the ground level floor. In fact, that classroom was where I learned Latin. Latin is the language I took when I was in high school. And we in there, and all of a sudden, these Black men come in there dressed in a way I had never seen Black people dressed before. African style clothes. I think I had seen a dashiki before, but I ain't see an African coat, African style. See, Amiri Baraka's headquarters was right down, literally down the next block, not 2 blocks, the next block was his headquarters. The people in the street call it 502 because it was 502 High Street. But Baraka, his organization, called it Hikalu Umoja, which meant House of Unity. So I had to take the #1 bus to school every day, and it would let me off at the corner of what was then High Street and Springfield Avenue. So I had to pass his headquarters every day.
Mm-hmm.
And them brothers would be standing out there at attention with their green dashikis on, and their boots, looking real militant. And then he would have a loudspeaker outside blasting music that I had never heard, like A Love Supreme by John Coltrane, Coltrane, or Song for My Father by Leon Thomas, this African style music. And we would pass, the students would pass, and they would say, Habari Gani. We didn't know what that was. I didn't know that was Swahili.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids, we said, those are the Habari Gani people. Habari Gani is a Swahili greeting, how you doing, what's the news, so to speak. And so we're in classroom B13. These black men come in there. One was short, and two of them was giants. At least they looked like giants to me,
Mm-hmm.
And the one that was short, he began speaking. I had never heard a black man speak like that before, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Now that
Yeah.
that was the match
Mm-hmm.
right there. That was the fire.
That was it. Yeah.
That was it. I never heard. I've been to church. I heard people preach. Now it's interesting. They didn't let Baraka. This is the short one was Amiri Baraka, the current mayor's father.
Correct.
And I'd been to church and I'd heard preaching. My cousin Manny was in the Nation of Islam. I never heard no speaking like that before. And he was on fire. Now that was a one and done kind of event. We heard him speak. He's talking about the need for community control of the institutions in our community. The black people should control the institutions in our community,
mm-hmm.
that we need to be politically involved. So that strike was short, 1970. But in 1971 was the long strike, the longest strike in the history, the longest teachers' strike in the history of the United States. I don't even think there's been one that long since. And they said if, nobody cared about the student council until 1971. They said, if y'all miss 35 days of school, you're not going to graduate. And they was like, what? You crazy? We done applied to colleges. We done been accepted. You
Mm-hmm.
talk about we're not going to. And then everybody turned around. Larry, what you going to do about this?
Turn to you. Yeah.
All of a sudden, student government was important,
Mm-hmm.
So I organized, I did not by myself. The student council met and we planned our first demonstration. We organized a walkout. 90% of the students walked out. We marched downtown Newark to the DoubleTree Hotel. It's the DoubleTree.
DoubleTree. Now, is this when you were part of? Is this the youth board that you're getting
No,
into?
I wasn't even on the board yet.
Not even yet. Okay.
Not even yet. I wasn't even on the board yet. But it was that spring. We marched down. The board and the union were in the Gateway Hotel. It's called the DoubleTree now, but then it was called the Gateway. Mm-hmm. We walked out. We marched. We got to the Gateway. About 400 of us, 200 got in, and half of those got up to different floors, and we sat in.
Okay.
And then Gibson came. Gibson was the first black mayor of Newark.
Mm-hmm.
And we presented our demands to him, and he promised us he was going to deal with our demands. That was in March of 1971. In June, about a week before I graduated, one of Gibson's aides came to my house. It was a white man. Imagine that. My community was all black,
Yeah, by then, yeah.
Right. It was all black by then, right? This white man at the door said, the mayor wants to know if you be a member of the Board of Education. And I accepted. And on July 1st, 1971, I was appointed at the age of 17 to the Newark Board of Education. I think to this day, I still hold a record because I wasn't even old enough to vote. I wasn't 18 years old. I was going to turn 18 in December, but I was sworn in, and
That's incredible. That's incredible. And we're talking United States.
Yes,
That's
yes,
incredible. That's it.
it's a true story, brother, and it's more dramatic than that. I don't know if they told you, but I just came out with a book. Did you know? Did they tell you?
As far as you having a book, yes, yes.
Yes. We just myself and a sister named Annette Alston wrote this book. So all of that and what happened during the years I was on the board, all of that is in this book.
Life in the Struggle, correct?
A Life in the Struggle.
Yeah.
That's correct. And it's been almost a straight line from March of 1971 to where are we now? April of 2024. It's almost a straight line, you know. And then I had these 3 tumultuous years on the Newark Board of Education. And when my board term was up, I ran for city council.
Okay.
I also hold the record as being the youngest person to ever qualify as a city council candidate. I was 20 years old when I ran for city council. Didn't win. And in a way, it was good because if I had won, I would never went back to college. Like I started Princeton, but I had to leave Princeton. I couldn't do all that board education stuff and do Princeton too. It's too much. Man, Princeton was so hard. I would wake up in the morning cry. I would wake up crying. Imagine that. Yeah. You open me eyes and tears. Like, how am I going to do this? You know, so I left Princeton in the fall of 1971 and came back home to literally be like a full-time board member.
Can I ask you something? I don't want to minimize the whole Princeton thing, but our tie to Princeton, how's that happen? Well, there's a whole bunch of other colleges in this world that we live in.
Well, I had a very, I don't know. Some people would say I had a kind of bourgeois consciousness, I guess. I only applied to 3 schools.
Okay.
Princeton, Harvard, and Yale.
Okay.
And I was accepted at all 3. And I decided to go to Princeton because that's the one that gave me the biggest financial aid package because my people couldn't afford to send me to college. You know, it wasn't gonna happen, you know. But I visited Harvard. Man, it was too cold up there. I went up to Harvard like in February.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Brother, I'm like, it's too cold up. I mean, it was cold in Newark. People don't realize like how the weather has changed in 50 years. Man, we used to have snowstorms. 6 inches was nothing.
Correct.
We would have snowstorms 2, 3 feet. We had a storm so bad one year, my mother got stuck on the New Jersey Turnpike. My mother and my aunt stuck on the New Jersey Turnpike for 2 days. The snow would fall. The snow would be so deep. You know how some of these 3-story houses, you have steps that come from the ground level up to the first floor?
Yes.
It'd be like a porch there on the first floor. I used to jump off the banister of the porch into the snow.
Yeah.
That's how deep the snow was. The winters we have now, we've had winters recently where there was hardly any snow. You know, but, you know, I had wanted to be, by the time I got to my senior year, I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
You know, and I wanted to go to the best school because I had planned to go to law school, you know, and I applied to those 3 colleges. I also, you know, getting thrown out of school in the 8th grade made me turn my life around, so to speak.
Okay.
You know, a lot of people don't know it, but I graduated 7th academically in my class. Like when I got to arts high school, I was determined. That episode where I saw my mother in tears begging this man to let me back into school, that had a real profound impact on me. So I graduated, I got down on my studies. I was not athletically inclined. Arts high school didn't have a football team. Had a fairly good basketball team though. You
Okay.
know, schools, arts high would beat schools and then they want to fight us. You know, you know. I was too uncoordinated. I was short. I wasn't tall enough for basketball. I was too uncoordinated for baseball. And so I decided to go out for track. Because, when you're in high school, if you're not on somebody's team, you back in those days, I don't know how it is now, but if you wasn't on somebody's team, you wasn't gonna have a girlfriend. You was,
Yeah, no, it helped. It
it
helped.
helped, right? You
Yeah,
know what I'm talking about, right?
yeah, it helped. Yeah,
So I went out for the track team. Man, I was so slow.
yeah.
They used just I started with the 100-yard dash, and they just took me out of one event after another. And then
What
finally,
about long distance? How about
well, this is what I'm coming to. I was too slow for anything. And then they said, well, we don't have enough people to run the 2 mile. We're gonna put you in the 2 mile. And that's where
yeah?
I stayed.
Okay,
So,
okay.
so my first meet, guess where it was? West Side High School, right?
Oh,
So I'm still in the neighborhood, right? All my friends, they at West Side, right? Man, back then, like if you go to West Side now, you see the school and then there's a building next to the school.
okay.
That building was built on the track because West Side was overcrowded. West Side used to have his own track, his own athletic field and track. The addition to the school, they built it on the track. So now West Side don't have no track. But then we ran our first meet between West Side and Arts High School. Let me tell you something, brother. I was so slow.
Mm.
I got lapped twice
Ooh. And a two
in the
mile,
2
yeah.
miles,
Ooh, yeah,
8 laps.
yeah,
I
yeah,
got lapped twice.
yeah,
My girlfriend quit me that day. This is the truth. She's like, it's
yeah,
done.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you know why? Because it was such a humiliating experience because all the kids I grew up with in the neighborhood, a lot of them were there at
Mm-hmm,
that meet.
mm-hmm.
Because even though I'm going to Arts High, I live in the West Side neighborhood, you know?
Yeah.
And so this humiliation was witnessed by many. But I kept at it. Let me tell you, let me see. In my freshman year, I only got a I got a junior varsity letter by virtue of the fact that there would be 3 people in the race sometimes. So I get third,
All right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know. Then in my sophomore year, I got a varsity letter, that because I did manage to maybe get a couple of second places in there. So I got enough points for varsity letter. But it was in my junior year that, my body is changing now.
Mm-hmm.
And in my junior year, in the meet between Arts High School and East Side High School, I became the first person to break 10 minutes in the history of the city of Newark. Because up until that time, the fastest time, now 10 minutes is nothing now, the way these kids are running today.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, the city record was like 10 minutes and 17 seconds. In the spring of I guess that would be 1970, yes. The spring of 70, I broke 10 minutes for the first time in the history of the city of Newark. Nobody had ever broke 10 minutes. And it was It was at Riverbank Park. You know where Riverbank Park is? Down neck below Penn Station.
Over that way. Okay.
Yeah, go all the way down. They still have the track there. It's a fifth of a mile track. So you had to run 10 laps for 2 miles, 5 laps for 1 mile, 10 laps for 2. And what I had done, I was never a fast runner. But as I got stronger, I learned how to pace myself.
But I said pace is key. Yes.
That's right. I learned how to pace myself. And so in my mind, I'm trying to hit each lap in 60 seconds. On a quarter-mile track, to break 10 minutes, I'd have to hit it in 75 seconds. But for some reason in my head, hitting each of those fifths of each of those each lap was easier at 60 seconds a lap than 75 seconds. For some reason in my head, you know, it's just in my head, right?
Okay.
I knew that each time I had to hit that in like 60 seconds or less. And I was hitting them, you know, hitting them and hitting them. And my coach, you could see his face light up. He's a little guy named Jerry Marcus. Mr. Marcus was my coach. And he was like, let me tell you something. That man, he never said a negative word to me. All the races I lost. And back in those days, they had gravel and dirt tracks. When I would finish a race, brother, I would be covered in dirt because the mud would fly off. The people in front of me fly off their shoes and hit me in the back. You know, I'm the last one. I'd be covered in mud sometime. But Mr. Marcus would never say anything negative. He would say, you were 5 seconds faster in this race than you were, you know, before, right? But that day, his face lit up. So I didn't take, I was running well, but I wasn't consistently running well. You know, like I never broke 10 minutes again. I broke it one time in my junior year. But in my going into my senior year, a couple of things happened. One is that I went on this program called Outward Bound. I don't know if you ever heard of Outward Bound. It was a survival training program. They had these Outward Bound camps all around America. One was a hurricane camp down there in, I think it was off the coast of North Carolina or South Carolina. But they had a mountaineering camp in the Cascade Mountains of Oregon. 20,000, 10,000 feet up. I went on Outward Bound and I was out there in the Cascade Mountains for 28 days, marched 206 miles, climbed all kind of mountains. It had a physical effect on me because when you at that altitude, you don't have as much oxygen. So my body was adjusting itself to work without oxygen. So you go from there with less oxygen, you come down here, it's oxygen rich.
Yes.
So the oxygen, you know, is more potent now. And so I went on Outward Bound in the summer before my senior year started. And then I went to a place called Roaring Valley Track and Field Camp. It was run by the coach of Rider College. It was in Roaring Valley, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
When I came back in the fall of 1970, Arts High formed its first cross-country team in its history. I took city in 1970. I was city champion, you know, because I had had all this training, right? It's like cross training. I mean, I wasn't running up there in the camp, but I was marching 20 miles a day. You know, we were climbing Bachelor's Butte and the Three Sisters and all of those are mountains, you know. So I'm stronger now. So I took city and cross country in my in the fall of my senior year, which was the fall of 1970. And then in the spring, I took city. I set a new record.
Mm-hmm.
I won the state sectional. I won the state group one
Mm-hmm.
championship. New record, 9 minutes and 36 seconds
Mm-hmm.
for 2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the AAU junior 3 mile champion and
Okay.
had never run the 3 mile race. Never. My coach said, come on, Larry, we going out here to Highland Park for the AAU junior championships, because his head big now, because he had never had like someone winning these championships,
Mm-hmm.
Took me down there. I won the 3 mile AAU junior championship in 15 minutes and 45 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
3 miles.
Yeah.
And, so I had all this going, the athletics, the academics,
Can
the
I ask
music.
before I forget, with the
Yeah.
success towards the end, did the girl that quit you, did she come back?
No, never came back. But listen, like a story in a movie,
Mm.
when I took city in cross country, she was there. She
Yeah.
was there to cheer her boyfriend on because he was running too.
Mm-hmm.
And man, let me tell you something. There were 2 races in that cross country season that just I'll never forget. Because I lived across the street from Westside Park. Westside was where they ran a lot of the cross country races, and a lot of this. There was only 8 high schools in those days, and most of them trained, had practice, as well as meets at Westside Park. We had dual meets, tri meets, So one day, I'm coming to Westside Park for practice, and I see all these people. I'm like, damn, must be a fight. Because usually when it's a big crowd and some folks fight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I get closer and closer, and I see these school buses parked on 18th Avenue. And I get up the hill because the race would start at the top of that hill, like on 17th Street. You go
Okay.
up 17th Street, you know, and I'm coming up there because I wouldn't change in the field house. Since I lived next to the park, I would go home, change my clothes, and come to the park. And I get there, and my teammates, they're saying, Larry, all these people here from Weequahic High School, they came to see Barry Mason beat you.
Mm-hmm.
There was this brother, he was a great runner, no doubt. Let me tell you, this brother was so good that in my junior year in the spring, when we ran track, we'd have like a dual meet, either arts high and Weequahic or a tri meet, whatever. Barry Mason was so good. He was a miler. That was his main event.
Okay.
He would run the mile and win that, and then come and get in the 2 mile and win that. That's how good he was. He was really good. And he looked like a runner. Like when you looked at, like if you think of a great runner, you see him.
Okay.
He was tall and lean and muscular. You know, I was short. I was short. I didn't look like anybody's runner, you know. And he took long strides, and I had these short, choppy strides. So we had this meet, and all these people came out to see Barry Mason beat me. I guess because they had a coach. His name was Mr. Moore, Lenny Moore. And now I don't know what all happened to make them want to come out to this meet to see this race, but they came. So we're running, right? And this is a dual meet. This is in the fall. of 70. We're running. Now, Mason is leading the whole race. And I'm laying like right with him. I wouldn't try to pass him. And we hit that hill to go back up the hill towards 16th Avenue. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I don't know if you know what side. It's like where the baseball stadium is. We go back up the hill, right? We come down the hill around, used to be a lake in West Side Park. We ran around the lake and then come back up. And the last half mile, I said, it's now or never, because I didn't have a kick. Barry Mason was known for his kick. We hit that hill right there. I passed him, go round the tennis courts, coming back down that stretch toward 18th Avenue. Brother, you could have heard a pin drop. Like all these people was out there, but there was no cheering going on. You know, I'm coming down. I'm not even looking back. I'm figuring he's close to me, just knowing him, you know, like this ain't no guy I'm going to knock out, you know. I know he's like right behind me and I'm coming, and you make a turn. When you come down that straight on 17th Street, you make that turn on the bridle path and you come back up to the finish line. I was on one side of the bridle path. He was on the other. I saw him as I was crossing the finish line. Man, them people was mad. They was upset. So the city meet was the rematch between me and Mason.
Okay.
And they was out, you know, to beat me. It was like, how could this happen? How could this guy from our side do that? You know, but I changed the strategy in the city meet because I'm stronger now, right? I done been to the mountain, literally been to the mountaintop, right?
Yes.
Been to the mountaintop, been to Roaring Valley. And I decided to change the strategy. I decided to go out first this time. Instead of letting Mason go out first, I'm gonna go out and I'm not gonna run all out, but I'm gonna set a strong pace, you know, for the race. And I did that, and that's how I won city. I think I did it. It was like 2.5 miles. I think I did it in like 12 minutes and 53 seconds. Back in those days, cross country was 2.5 miles. I don't know. I think it's 3,000 meters now. I don't know. I'm not sure, but back then it was 2.5 miles. But I ran a whole different rate because, you know, nobody was used to me like going out front because I didn't have the confidence, you know, that I could have a strong enough kick at the end. But I went out and kept that strong pace. And by keeping that strong pace, the distance between me and the people that were closest just kept getting wider and wider. And, you know, I finished up. So this rivalry repeated itself during track season. But long story short, because I'm going, you like, how did I get to Princeton, Harvard, and Yale, right? So I had this resume, right? Now, this is before I was on the board, you know, captain of the track team, captain of the cross country team, leader of the student government, member National Honor Society, you know.
Yeah.
It was all there. And, you know, I filled out the applications best I could, you know, and bam, you know, I had those acceptance letters. And like I said, I went to Harvard. I visited Harvard. I didn't visit Yale because truthfully, I really wanted to go to Harvard because they got a law school. Princeton doesn't have a law school or a medical school. You know, I wanted to go to Harvard because I wanted to be a lawyer, you know, kind of like Barack Obama's story, right? I wanted to be a lawyer. But man, Harvard did not give me a good financial aid package. I mean, my mother was a seamstress. My father was dead. You know, we had no money. You know, they didn't have money to send me to Essex County College, you know. So I had to go where the money was. And that's how, that's how I got there. Like I said, I didn't get to visit Yale, but I did visit Harvard. And I wasn't too once I went there, I'm like, it's too cold up here. But if they had given me the money, I would have went,
You don't win. Yeah.
you know. But it's interesting now though, like Princeton, I think has a policy where if kids come from a family that make less than $100,000 a year, they get a full scholarship, no
Okay.
loans, anything. Yeah, they do that now. I don't know if Harvard has the same policy. And what was interesting when I got to Princeton in 1971, most of the Black students that were there were students from public schools in inner cities. That's what they called it back then, right? The inner city. Like me. They were from Jersey City,
Mm.
and city law, LA. They was from the hood, in their cities. And so the I would say the majority of the Black students that I interacted with at Princeton, they were students that were from low income families, poor families, working class families like myself.
Okay.
I left Princeton in 71 to do the board thing, right? The 3 years on the board.
Mm-hmm.
I came back to Princeton in 74, student body, totally different, brother. Now I'm talking about the Black student body. Totally different, man. Like in just 3 years, the majority of the students, Black, Latino, even Chicano, Native American, many of them had gone to private schools, to private secondary schools,
Okay.
private high schools. They came from well-to-do families who could afford to send them to Princeton. And you could kind of feel, I can't say anybody walked up to me and like, well, I'm better than you. None, it wasn't none of that. But you could see and feel a difference, and that was one of the reasons you felt that difference because, I knew like this Chicano guy, you say, oh, he went to Exeter.
Mm.
Now he out of the barrio, right? That's what they call the barrio in Spanish. He out of the barrio, but well, he wasn't out of the barrio then. The ones I knew when I came in were out of the barrio, but here's the Chicano brother now. He come from a family that could afford to send him to Exeter,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So it was a different vibe, and like the thing that happened when I left Princeton to come back to do the board and then went back to Princeton, because when I left, when I was appointed to the board, it was front page news, New
I'm
York
sure.
Times.
I'm sure.
Yes. I mean, it was that American dream, right? Black kid from the ghetto, going to Princeton, appointed to the board of education. Ain't life grand?
Mm-hmm.
Hey man, America is great, right? Man, when I left Princeton, I withdrew because if I had stayed there and flunked out, I couldn't have come back. So I talked to some of the brothers, right? Now, when I say the brothers, I'm talking about in the administration.
Mm-hmm.
They said if you leave before you get any failing grades, that you can return. It'll be easier for you to return. So I withdrew. When I left Princeton, I think that was more front page news than when I was appointed to the school board. Headline: School board member drops out of Princeton.
About to say, the media, they'll put their own words to it.
Brother, my poor mother, she crying, what have you done to your life?
Mm-hmm.
you know? And people were saying that he'll never return. He'll never go back. So when my school board term was up, I'm ready to go back. On the way back, my girlfriend having a baby.
Okay.
Summer of 1974.
Okay.
We get married in July. Baraka, the father of the mayor, he marries us.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my ex-wife, my first wife, I've been married twice, marries us. So I come back to Princeton. I'm married, got a child on the way,
Mm-hmm.
no track, no cross country. I had to work. I worked as a security guard at Princeton. I worked the graveyard shift.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go from building to building on the campus. I had this clock with a key. And that's how it's true. I had this clock with a key. I mean, it didn't have the key, it was a clock. And it would be a station in every building that had a key. And I'd have to take that key and put it in the clock and turn it. It would punch. It would show that, I was making my rounds.
Right, right.
And I worked that security job for 4 years, you know, and I would come home on the weekends. It's very hard. They wouldn't let me bring my family to Princeton when I returned. They said no, because if you bring your family, you'll probably not finish this time. And they wanted me to finish.
Okay.
So in my sophomore year, they said I could bring my family, but now my ex, she didn't want to come. She didn't want to come. She didn't want to come to Princeton. She was working
Okay.
and making good money. She worked at an auto plant. She worked at General Motors in Linden. Imagine that. The husband is in school and the wife is working on an assembly line.
Yeah.
Not just working on an assembly line
Mm-hmm.
in the auto plant. You know that made some issues, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And this was the challenge that I had. But in the midst of all of that, somehow I still managed to build a movement, or I should say help to build, because I wasn't the only one. You can't have a movement of one. I was a leader of the anti-apartheid struggle at Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
It's a worldwide movement to try to bring down the racist apartheid regime in South Africa. And one of the ways college students could help with that was to get their colleges to take their money out of companies that did business with South Africa. And we formed an organization called the People's Front for the Liberation of Southern Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for South Africa, but Southern Africa, the liberation of South Africa, of Zimbabwe, of Southwest Africa, now called Namibia, of Mozambique, which was under the Portuguese. Namibia had been a German colony. Zimbabwe had been a British colony. The whites in South Africa had broke off and set up their own country, but it was a racist apartheid regime. So we had protests. We began in the spring of my freshman year, and we did mostly educational programs. We would bring in speakers. Like we brought in people from the ANC, from the African, can you believe that? Brought them in to Princeton, from the African National Congress, from the Pan-Africanist Congress. We brought in people from ZANU. And ZANU, they was fighting an armed struggle. I mean, they were fighting armed struggle. All of them were fighting armed struggle, but like in Zimbabwe, they was really getting it on, And we brought in Tapson Marere from ZANU, Zimbabwe African National Union, to speak, brought in all these people, man. And so for a couple of years, we would have demonstrations. We might get 150 people, 100 people, 150. So by the time our senior year, we said we got to kick it up. We got to pick it up. We started a daily protest at Nassau Hall. Nassau Hall is that picture, is that building in the picture you see at Princeton. That big colonial style building, that's Nassau Hall.
Okay.
It's a national monument, and it's the primary administration building. The president's office in Nassau Hall. We picketed Nassau Hall for 66 consecutive days, every day for 66 days. And by the spring, those pickets had grown from like 12 people to hundreds of people. And we knew then, we'd be getting 400, 600 people a day, and then we knew we were ready.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a meeting. We're going to take over Nassau Hall. So 210 students said they would participate in the sit-in, but a lot of other students said, we can't participate because my father told me if I get thrown out of school, he's not going to pay for my education. So we said, bet, this is what we're going to do. Those of us who can go in, will go in. Those of you who cannot go in with us, you protest outside. Bring us food, bring us blankets while we take over. And that's what happened. And like 600 students was on the outside and 210 of us were on the inside.
Inside, yeah.
Instead of saying, well, you're not revolutionary because you ain't going in with us. We're like, no, everybody different. Everybody can't do the same thing. So you do what you can do and we'll do what we can do. And then when we got like to the third day of the takeover, it was like democratic participation, right? We discussing whether or not to leave. Let me tell you, that was one of the most intense political discussions I ever had. And I was on the side that was the unpopular side.
Mm-hmm.
These students, they wanted to get arrested. The board had met with us. They met with a group of us. We came out to meet with the board members. They said they were going to divest from 3 companies. We said, okay, we'll take it back to the group. It was about 80 of the 210 that wanted, and man, we argued for about 3 or 4 hours, because they felt that we wouldn't be. Now, these are people that didn't actually participate in the organizing, They was, we've had this movement going for 3 years. They jumped in it the last part of the senior year.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to get arrested because they were reading about other campuses.
And they were happening over there. Yeah.
That's right. They wanted to have the same strong action. I couldn't fault them for it, but I'm like, look, we get arrested. Some of y'all might not graduate, and we want you to live to fight another day. We got some consent. We got a little bit. We got what our strength could get us at this particular moment. There's no need of you all not being able to get your diploma at the end of the year. So we took a vote. And the number who were for leaving outnumbered, the folks. We were the majority to leave, But I'm gonna tell you something. It created a kind of rift, because some people felt we wasn't being revolutionary enough, and but that was 48 years ago.
Yeah, and everybody's interpretation of revolutionary is different too.
Yeah.
Versus what they may have seen of her versus to actually the steps that some people take individually. So that interpretation is left up to each individual.
Right. And so everybody graduated. We did go on trial. There was what was called an administrative trial.
Okay.
They wasn't going to let us get out with no penalties. So we had some of the students who were going to law school. Two of them, one was David Adams, one was George Riley. They argued our side at the administrative trial. And when the administrative trial was over, the administrators, faculty took a vote, no penalty. No penalty. Because we stayed unified. We stayed unified. And it took a long time because the divestment was not popular. It was not popular in my freshman year, my sophomore year. It began to move, the needle on the dial began to move in my junior year, but it was really in my senior year. And it corresponded to the struggle that was going on in South Africa, because the Soweto uprising took place in June of 1976. And that was a new stage of struggle in South Africa. And the news of Soweto went all around the world. And the upsurge in the struggle in South Africa with Soweto made an upsurge in the US and in Britain and in other countries where there was a movement, to end apartheid.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody graduated, and we got some of the companies to divest. I ended up going to graduate school at Princeton. I was in a doctoral program. But I was not able to finish the doctoral program for personal reasons at that time. And I came back home. I graduated in 1978. I graduated cum laude from Princeton University. And I did 2 years of graduate work, but I came back home in 1980. And the first thing I organized when I got back home was I ran for district leader and formed a district assembly in my district. Then I organized 400 families into something called the People's Energy Cooperative, where the families that all use heating oil, instead of buying that individually, we bought as a group and got lower prices on the heating oil. And then in 1982, we formed the People's Organization for Progress. And POP will be observing its 42nd anniversary this year. And it's hard to believe that 42 years have passed, brother.
Nah, congrats. I mean, what was the premise of starting that?
Well, some of the folks that had been high school student activists when I was on the board, by now we all had moved through life.
Yeah.
We had houses, we had families, we had apartments, we had jobs, but we still wanted to be active. And we were not happy at that time. We felt that the organizations that were in existence weren't strong enough. Now, it's not like we wanted to be gun carrying, rifle carrying members of the Black Panther Party, but we wanted something stronger, something that would be in the streets, would be having demonstrations, mobilizing, organizing people. And so 9 of us came together. We actually came together in 1981. And we began to have monthly discussions. Each month we would meet and discuss how is it we would continue our political activism. So by 1982, we decided to form the group. The people who had been meeting that whole year decided to form what was called the People's Organization for Progress. We actually had our first action in 1982, I think it was February of 1982. And we've been at it ever since. There are periods when we would have a lot of activity, and then there were periods when we had little activity. There were times we had big demonstrations, and then there were a lot of times we had small demonstrations. It ebbs and flows, so to speak. It hadn't been we started out I mean, quite frankly, after 42 years, I wish the organization was bigger than it is today. You know, uh, I mean, we had envisioned that in 25 years or so, the organization would be huge, but it has remained relatively small. We have about, over the years, we've recruited several thousand members. I
Okay.
mean, these are people that sign the membership form. But in terms of like the active core, it maybe be like 200 active. And then within that 200, maybe about 50 or so that are really carrying the ball, so to speak.
Okay. That's what you're
You know,
saying.
so if there was people say, well, how do you feel about it? I said, well, my one regret is that, the organization is not bigger after 42 years. It's still a challenge. I mean, we're not finished. We still gonna continue to fight, but I mean, we like on the 8th lap of the 2 mile run now, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Come up,
We're on the
seventh, eighth
last
inning.
lap.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This Thursday will be the anniversary of the police brutality case that
Is that the one you
transformed.
March in Trenton? Was that the one you talking about? That's not the one in
No,
Trenton. Okay,
no, that's not the one in Trenton.
okay.
We had marches in Trenton. We had some big marches in Trenton too. But April 11th, this Thursday, will mark the 25th anniversary of the murder of Earl Faison by the Orange Police.
Mhm.
Now, many people might not know that name now, but that was 25 years ago a police brutality case almost as notorious as Amadou Diallo. The only reason more people know Diallo is because Diallo happened in New York City, and the media capital is New York City. Like New Jersey really doesn't have much of its own television infrastructure. I mean, now we have News 12, but there was no News 12 in 1999. I think there was NJP TV, New Jersey Public Television, and they didn't deal with a lot of controversial stuff.
Mhm.
The Faison case transformed POP because up until Faison, I mean, we had demonstrations and stuff, but not a lot. Most of our activity was educational activity, like forums and programs, celebrate King's birthday, celebrate Malcolm X's birthday, Black History Month,
Mhm.
and on, a lot of educational stuff. The Faison case transformed pop. So now it's more in the street than it is education.
Mhm.
Now people can critique that if they want. There's a critique there, I think. But, you know, the Faison case took us into the street. That was a hard fight. And it was a successful fight. It was the first time in the history of New Jersey that 5 cops were simultaneously convicted in connection with a single police brutality case.
Mhm.
And this Thursday will be the 25th anniversary of the death of Faison. It's quite a story. I mean, there's a whole chapter of my book that's devoted to the Faison struggle because it transformed POP. The POP that you know today, that people know today with the yellow sweatshirts and always having to protest, Faison case made that POP.
Okay.
That made that POP. The POP you know today was made in the furnace of the struggle for justice for Earl Faison.
Mhm. Yeah, that's powerful here. Even with POP and back when it started, and you've had experiences as far as elections and everything else here. When you wound up not trying as far as what you actually did, as far as pursue the state assembly and actually won, I think too. So you still always had way of, as far as wanting to still be in that political realm as well, along
Yeah,
with doing your own thing as well.
that's right. We've always we always saw things multidimensional.
Okay.
It's not either or. It's both and. It's not boycotts versus protests. It's protests and boycotts. It's
Okay.
not electoral activity versus protest activity. It's protests and electoral activity.
Okay.
It's all the weapons that are available to us we use to try to push forward the struggle for justice and for liberation. That's our outlook on things. You said people say, well, remember the Montgomery bus boycott. That's what we need. Y'all need to stop protesting and do some boycott. Why we got to stop protesting? We can't do boycott and protest.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can do both. Didn't Dr. King do both? He had to boycott. He had to march from Montgomery to Memphis. You know, you know, they registered to vote. They got people. You use all of it. You use everything that's available to you. It's not an either or proposition. You know, I think some people, now this is me talking now.
Mm-hmm.
This is my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. I think some people just don't like protests. I just think some people just don't like protests and they don't want to protest, but my position is if you don't want to protest, you don't have to protest. But you should do something else. Okay, you're not going to protest. What are you going to do?
Right.
You're going to organize a boycott. That's good. You're gonna do an educational series for our people on Black history or the power, the Black Power movement. I mean, you got to do something. I don't argue with people. And then there's the thing, well, why y'all protest police brutality? You should be talking about the violence that we do to each other. We can't do both.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, both happen in the world. It's not
Yes.
like we in
Yes.
a world where it's just the violence we do to each other, or we in a world where it's just the violence that the unjust violence police do to.
Mm-hmm.
All of that happens in the world. So we support the anti-violence organizations. When they have stuff and they let us know, we support them. And when we have stuff, we let them know, and sometimes they support us.
Right.
So, you shouldn't try to cordon off. But I have noticed, over the years that, there's a kind of aversion. And I remember how difficult it was for me. Like when I had my first protest when I was at Arts High in 1971, it was a big hurdle to get over. I mean, protest, I ain't never been to no protest. Like what's gonna happen? Am I gonna get arrested?
Mm-hmm.
Am I gonna graduate from school? Am I gonna get beat up by the cops? People gonna look at me funny. People gonna stop being my friend if I'm in the protest. 1,000 thoughts
Oh yeah.
go
Oh
through
yeah.
people's mind. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and then there's the other thing is like, well, we shouldn't protest. We should build our own. We can't protest and build our own. When the protest is over, I come to your Black-owned bookstore and buy books for political education for my organization. Why can't we why can't we have Black businesses and have a Black political movement? It doesn't have to be either or. And people who throw up that either or dichotomy, they're shortchanging themselves, when they could have the fullness of the experience, the fullness of the struggle. Look at the history of Black people. We did everything. We did everything. We didn't just do one thing. We did everything. And we're going to have to continue to do everything if we're going to continue to progress as a people, because there are people right now, brother, that are determined to take us back to 1940 45.
Mm-hmm.
They when the Supreme Court overturned the Dobbs decision, in the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, what did Clarence Thomas say? Clarence Thomas said, now that we have dealt with Roe, we can deal with Brown. You know what he was referring to? He was referring to Brown versus Board of Education, Topeka,
Right,
Kansas.
right.
Because they want to undo that. They want to undo that. They want to undo Brown. And it looks like they're moving right along on schedule to make that happen. You know, I know people now that have come to me and told me that they went to restaurants. This is in the 21st century, where they said, we really would prefer Black people not to come here. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I experienced when I was trying to find an apartment, I experienced what I believe to be racial discrimination in housing. This real estate broker, I was trying to get into an apartment that was right on the Glen Ridge Bloomfield line. It was in
Okay.
Glen Ridge, but you wouldn't know it was Glen Ridge. It's like when you on Bloomfield Avenue, you go past State Street Diner, you know, State
Mm-hmm.
Street Diner in Bloomfield. Once you go past there, you hit Glen Ridge. I wanted to get an apartment in this house that was right on Bloomfield Avenue. And I called the number and spoke to the lady. She said, oh yeah, come on, I'll meet you there. Blah, you know. I got there. That woman saw me. She tried to deny that she had ever talked to
That
me.
you spoke to, yeah.
Yep, she tried to deny it. She did not want to lease that apartment to me. You know, so we're still experiencing discrimination in housing, in employment, in education,
Mm-hmm.
even in healthcare. You know, I mean, there's a whole volume of literature on the racism in the medical industry. You know, and you've heard cases recently, like what was that? Sister Serena was talking about. They didn't want to give her adequate anesthesia when
Mm-hmm.
she was having pain, when she was having her child. You know, because there's this myth that white people believe that Black people don't feel pain the same way white people feel pain. It's some like crazy stuff that's going on in the 21st
Oh
century.
no, definitely. You talk about the medical stuff, the misdiagnoses of blacks, and you want to talk about. I mean, it's simple, but it's smack that in your face. Just even research being done on time spent blacks versus whites just waiting to be seen by a doctor.
Right.
As far as how blacks the same issues going on,
Mhm.
but blacks waiting forever to be seen in the same medical
Yep.
facility. Yeah, so it's a ton
Yep.
of stuff. It's a ton of stuff to your point here.
The,
Was
the,
that a
the,
reason? I was gonna say,
go ahead.
was that, I mean, even just throughout your life here, but even when you wanted to do it more of a bigger scale here back around 2019, 2020, that you wanted to be in the bigger scale as far as the Senate? Is that one of your
Right,
reasons?
right. Well, I ran for the Senate in 20 because I felt it would strengthen the progressive political movement that was on the march, that was being at that time uh, at the in the presidential race being led by Bernie Sanders.
Hmm.
Bernie Sanders had run for president in 2016,
Hmm.
and he had a progressive agenda. It's really interesting because a lot of people think that that progressive agenda was created by Bernie Sanders, but much of the stuff that was his agenda, Dr. King had talked about. He talked about in this book right here. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community?
Hmm.
Dr. King talked about economic bill of rights. Talk about free healthcare, free college, et cetera, living wage. It's all in here. Dr. King, in fact, as early as 1964, began to see that this was as much an economic struggle as it was a civil rights struggle. Because in 1964, he publishes the book, Why We Can't Wait. And in Why We Can't Wait, he puts forward what he first called a Bill of Rights for the socially disadvantaged.
Okay.
You know, affordable housing, or, you know, housing as a human right, living wage, not a minimum wage, guaranteed universal income, free health care, et cetera, et cetera. More things were added when Jesse Jackson ran for president in 1988. You know, we had supported the Jackson campaign in 1984. I was the state co-chairman of the Jackson campaign in 1988. 1995, I was the state chairman of the Million Man March Coalition. And many people don't know Million Man March had an agenda. There was a there was a book. I wish I had it. I lent my copy to somebody else and it got away with it. But again, I was at Gary, Indiana, 1972. Yeah. 1972, I was the youngest elected delegate. I was 18 years old. I had been elected to go to Gary, Indiana. And if you go online and you read the National Black Political Convention agenda of 1972, you open it up, first thing you're going to see, universal health care. So it's been a movement. So Bernie Sanders was raising this up again. You know, in 2016, I was a delegate for Bernie. I was a delegate to the Democratic National Convention for Bernie. And his movement was strong in 16. He didn't get the nomination in 16. He came back again in 20. And I thought by running for president, it would help, not president, Freudian slip there, brother.
No, I'm with you.
When I was running for Senate, you know, I thought it would strengthen the movement in New Jersey if we had somebody from Jersey on the ballot with Sanders, you know? So I ran in 20 to strengthen the movement and also help push that progressive agenda. Unfortunately, COVID came and upended everything. Sanders wrapped up his campaign early. He actually announced he was ending his campaign before he even got to Jersey, but he was still on the ballot, so people did get to vote for him. But I was still on the ballot too, you know? And so now I'm running again in 2024 to essentially do this. We don't have a Bernie Sanders now. We don't have a progressive presidential candidate. We have Biden, who's running Democratic Party, and we have Trump. And that looks like what the matchup is going to be by the time we get to November. You need progressive candidates to push the progressive agenda so that the things we want are included in the Democratic Party platform. So whoever becomes the nominee of the party for president will have to push at least some of those things if he wants the support of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And so that's why I ran in 20, and that's why I'm running in 24. Although in 20, I'm pushing more, or I should say, in addition to, like, for instance, the top of Bernie's agenda in 2020 was Medicare for all. That's at the top of my agenda in 2024, but also at the top of my agenda is reparations.
Like you said, why can't you do both?
That's right. Why can't you do both? That's right. So also at the top of my agenda is reparations for African Americans. Living wage, yes. Also, police brutality legislation, um, free college, yes, but also voting rights,
Mm-hmm.
which are in jeopardy for Black people. You know, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we need new civil rights legislation. You know how many racial discrimination cases there are in America every year? People still being discriminated against in housing, education, healthcare, et cetera, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera. We need a civil rights law, not an act. Civil Rights Act got to be renewed every 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. We need one permanent law that guarantees our civil rights and is the bulwark against discrimination against us in all areas of life. We need a new Civil Rights Act. We need a new Voting Rights Act. I would dare say what we need is an amendment to the Constitution. See, the Constitution does not explicitly guarantee our right to vote. We need an amendment to the Constitution that guarantees everyone's right to vote, because then there's no basis. There's no legal basis for people to argue against, our voting rights. In 2023, they introduced 500 bills in 49 state legislatures
Mm-hmm.
to interfere with our right to vote in some way. From laws say you can't bring people food when they're online, you can't bring them water when they're online. I mean, crazy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
They allowed to close down polling places so that you only end up with where you used to have 20 polling places in a ward or an area. Now you only got 5, and you got lines of 200 and 300 people. And then you close the poll before everybody can get in the vote.
Everybody get a chance, right?
That's how they're doing it, man. I'm telling you, they're trying to take us back, but we're not going back without a fight. That's what POP is all about. We're about that fight, you know.
Yeah. If elected, I mean, along with what you just said, was there anything else you looking to change?
Oh, brother, I got a whole agenda.
As far as what's at the top of that agenda?
Let's see if this like one of the leaflets for my campaign.
Yeah.
You see these 2 lists here.
Okay.
Those are some of the main things. That's not even the whole agenda, but those are some of the main things. Like, one thing we have to deal with is gentrification and the unaffordability of housing.
The housing. Okay.
It's ridiculous out here, man. People are paying as much as 2/3 of their income on housing.
Mm-hmm.
There's hardly enough money left to do anything else. You bring home $2,500 a month, if that,
Mm-hmm.
and your rent is $2,200 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how some folks make it. Some of these sisters, they're working 2 jobs, but they got to pay. We should have universal child care in America. You know how much some people are spending on child care? They spend like $300, $400, $500 a week
Yes.
to pay somebody to look after their kids so they can go to work. If you got to pay $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month for child care, you got to pay $1,800 to $2,100 a month for rent. You got to pay your car note. You got to pay your auto insurance. What's left?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Most people are not making 6-figure salaries. They're not.
Mm-hmm.
I think the average working person now, on average, is making $50,000 on average. Some make more, some make less. I mean, for instance, why is the minimum wage in the United States $7.25 an hour? You can't pay no rent on $7.25 an hour nowhere.
Nowhere. Yeah.
Not nowhere
Mm-hmm.
in America
Mm-hmm.
for a 1-bedroom apartment
Mm-hmm.
can you pay your rent with a wage of $7.25 an hour.
Yeah. No.
There should be an immediate increase in the federal minimum wage, immediate increase. We used to say $15 an hour. That was 15 years ago. It should be a minimum $18 an hour. That should be the minimum wage. Do you know if they had factored in inflation and the minimum wage kept pace with inflation, you know what the minimum wage would be now?
What's that?
The minimum wage would be about $27 an hour. That would be the minimum wage if the minimum wage kept pace with inflation. It's crazy what's going on in this country. I'm gonna tell you, we're headed towards some rough times because people can only take so much.
Yeah, before they start reacting. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
I mean, look at the healthcare. I mean, I was in a debate last night, people were talking about the things that are happening with maternal care. I mean, why are there unequal outcomes? Why is it that black maternal mortality rates are higher than white maternal mortality rates? Why is that black infant mortality rates are higher than white infant mortality rates?
Mm-hmm.
It's because of the inequality of healthcare delivery. The hospitals in our community are not equal to the hospitals in white communities. In fact, not only are they not equal, they close our hospitals. You know how many hospitals have been closed in New Jersey in the last 25 years?
Yeah, I see one
Scores.
being in Orange. I ride past that Orange Memorial, which is
Every day, right?
Yeah.
It's a
It's just
disgrace, brother.
yeah.
That building, somebody should take a picture of that building in its current state, because that tells you what America is about.
Such an eyesore. Yeah.
You know, and the other thing is, in a lot of towns, not only did we lose the hospitals, but those hospitals were major employers, if not the major employer in the town of black people.
Yeah.
Because black people could get, jobs as orderlies and nurses' aides and maintenance and all kind of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Launderers. I mean, who cleans the hospital sheets? I mean, that's all work, either at the hospital or in industry that's connected to the hospital.
Correct.
Muhlenberg Hospital, we led a big fight against the closure of Muhlenberg. Muhlenberg was the biggest employer in the city of Plainfield. So one of the things that I would do, I would propose legislation for a national health care infrastructure protection and development fund. Not another hospital should be closed in the United States of America. And the federal government should put up the money to keep them hospitals open. Look what happened during COVID. Can we afford to close more hospitals? There weren't enough beds for people. What if there's another pandemic?
Yeah.
Not another hospital should close. We should be building hospitals, not closing hospitals.
Totally agree here. I mean, and again, how you feel just about your chances?
Well, it's an uphill fight, but I felt better than ever last night. I was at a debate last night sponsored by the NAACP, and I got a very warm response from the people at that debate. It was at the Crown the Crown Plaza Hotel
Okay.
in Plainsboro.
Okay.
And it was very nice, very well organized, very well done by the NAACP. They had Anthony Johnson from ABC TV, the newsman, as the moderator. And it was great. It's going to be an uphill fight, but if I get people support, I think we can pull it off. If people want to support the campaign, they can just go to Lawrence Hamm, #4, Senate. Lawrence Hamm 4 Senate with the #4, not the word 4. Lawrence Hamm 4 Senate.info. You can go to my campaign website. You can sign up to volunteer. You can sign up to make a financial donation. If you can't go to the website, people can just call the campaign at 973-332-6195. 973-332-6195. It felt very good last night. When I left that debate last night, I was more optimistic than ever before about our chances. It's gonna be an uphill battle, but I'm in it to win, and I'm in it to the end.
Most definitely, most definitely. And I think people don't even know when we talk about U.S. senators, Senate, and those who sat in Senate, there's only been about 11 or so blacks.
Yep.
You'll be the 12th. People don't know.
Yeah.
People don't even realize that it's only been about 11 of them.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, hopefully you be the 12th here. What I wanted to ask, what I do with this, even on the back end, like to have a little fun with not so random questions. I mean, random questions or what have you. I mean, whatever just comes to mind, you just answer. You're gonna be like, why is he even
Okay.
asking me this? Have like a little fun here.
Okay. Go ahead.
Now, with that being said, being a Jersey guy here, do you prefer the Parkway or the Turnpike?
Well, truthfully, the Turnpike moves better than the Parkway. So I'm a Turnpike person. But I use the Parkway to get to the Turnpike. Whenever I'm going Turnpike, I take the Parkway down to 129 and jump on the Turnpike.
All right. You talked about a red light earlier here. Block party or the club?
I definitely, in my day, was a club head.
Okay. Yeah.
I was a club head.
Yeah.
So.
You had a particular spot back in your day?
Man, I used to be all over, man. I
Okay.
used to be all over. Spots in our area. Marlowe's.
Marlowe's.
That's where I started.
In Irvington?
Yeah, that's where I
Okay.
started going to club.
Okay.
Marlowe's,
Okay.
and this was back in the 80s.
Okay.
And I have a good relationship with Rufus Edmundo, the owner. He's been very supportive
Okay, good
of the
stuff.
People's Organization for Progress. Like, he has opened up his establishment for events. We've had events, POP events at his establishment. We've had fundraisers. I mean, our relationship with him has been so good. We actually gave him an award one year. And the way it started, I used to just be a customer. It wasn't like, let me go in here and meet the owner and see if I can get him to support pop. No, it wasn't even like that. After the pop meeting, I wanted to go relax somewhere and hear some music. I go to Marlowe's, and eventually being there over time, he used to, because he's had some health challenges, but he'd be in the establishment. He'd be sitting at the bar, and one night I think someone pointed him out to me, and I bought the brother a drink, We get to talk. We talk now. Like, I do not go to the club like I used to 20 years ago.
Right.
But he and I, I think it was last week, we had a conversation.
Okay.
So, I shout him out. I mean, his was not the only club I went to, but I shout him out because he's a businessman that's socially conscious, who supported the work of the People's Organization for Progress. But I used I used to go to Club 88 when it was Club 88, you know.
Okay.
Then it became, what was it after, what did it become after Club 88?
Oh, I'm not
Uh,
sure.
I can't remember the name, but I used to go to Club 88. That's when people from New York was coming to Club 88. That's when people would lined up
Hmm.
over there on Evergreen,
Evergreen
brother.
Place, yeah. Evergreen
Yeah,
Place, yeah.
man, that line be going round the block,
Hmm.
you know. So we actually gave, believe it or not, we gave an event there with Dick Gregory
Mm.
at Club 88.
Mm.
This was during the Jesse Jackson campaign.
Okay.
And you see this intersection of culture and business and
That's
politics,
that's right.
you know? And when Jesse Jackson was running in 84, he had surrogates. Like we wanted Jesse Jackson. We had formed a group called Friends of Jesse Jackson. POP had actually formed this group called Friends of Jesse Jackson. And then, you know, we said, we want Jesse to come speak to us. And they said, well, Jesse can't come, but we'll send Dick Gregory, you know? And so we ended up having a event at Club 88. And they had a downstairs and an upstairs. It
Okay.
was packed out, man. It was packed out with Dick Gregory. And then there was another place in Irvington that did not only did the owner let us do a fundraiser there for Jesse, he had the whole wall next to his building painted with an advertisement for
Mm.
Jesse Jackson, you know,
Okay. Okay.
for president,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, man, I used to go to all the places, brother. All the
Uh,
places, big and small.
Good
You
stuff.
know, people wouldn't know. You know, they look at Larry Harris, they be like, you know, he pretty
Mhm.
boring. You know,
Nah,
but
nah, 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 nah. This is great. This is great
you
here.
know, but I used to go. You know, I it's been so long I can't even remember that there was dark shadows on 12th Street and Central Avenue. You
Okay.
remember that?
No,
And
I
that was
don't.
a
I don't.
nice club when it
Okay.
opened
Okay.
because it was a multi-level facility.
Hmm.
They had a stage for live performance.
Yeah.
They had upstairs. They had private rooms. They had bars and a kitchen and a restaurant.
Mm.
You know, it was a pretty classy place for a time, but you know, people don't know how to act. They start shooting, you know,
Hmm.
outside the club. I mean, I don't think I ever seen anything happen inside that club, but there was a shootout in front of the club, end up with the club closing down.
Yeah.
Then they reopened the club.
Hmm.
You know, it's hard to get your crowd back once you close down. They reopened the club, another shootout. Eventually it had to be closing. Now that building is gone. They done tore the whole building down, you know. There
Hmm.
was Sir Richard's in Orange.
Right.
I don't know if people remember Sir Richard's in Orange. Oh man, and I mean, I don't know if it qualifies as a club, but I used to go to Queen of Sheba,
Okay.
Sheba Temple over there on Springfield Avenue,
Hmm.
you know. And I mean, it wasn't a big joint, but I had some good times there.
Nah, good
You
stuff.
know,
Nah, nah. Good
I had some
stuff. Good stuff.
good times there, you know. Um, so I could go on,
Nah,
man.
nah.
I
Sound like you
made
had a
the
good time. Yeah, major
yeah,
rounds.
I had a good
Had a good
time.
time. Had
I
a
had a
good
good
time.
time.
Good
Went to New
time.
York too. Went to Shadows in New York. Used to hang out there
Hmm.
from time to time. But like in Jersey, I had business and political relationships
Hmm.
with the clubs. The clubs became places that we could do fundraisers for the organization. You know, we could bring people, and sometimes, you know, the owners would make donations to the organization. You know,
Hmm.
is like I said, that our relationship with Rufus was so strong that we gave him an award. Gave him an award. We used to meet at Abyssinian Baptist Church, you know, before COVID, and we had an award ceremony there, and we gave Rufus an award there because he was a socially conscious businessman. You know,
Hmm.
and he, let me tell you something. He was opinionated. He wasn't just like, oh yeah, y'all can use my establishment, no problem. Just see this one as no. He would One time there was a whole period where once a week we would actually have political discussions
Hmm.
in Marlowe's. Like the people would all sit at the bar and we'd have a mic and it'd be a certain topic that for that night. And for say like 2 hours, we just pass the mic around, let people talk. We actually have political discussions. We wasn't trying to solve no problems or nothing, but there were issues going on, and we would have these political discussions. And he liked doing that, and he would participate in those discussions. You know. So anyway, what are the other questions? The other
No, no, all good. No, I love hearing this. This is good stuff. Speaking of establishments here, Bragman's or Cooper's?
say again,
I said
Bradley's or Cooperman?
Bragman's or Cooper's.
Yeah, I used to go to Cooper's
Okay.
for corned beef sandwiches, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to go down there for corned beef sandwiches. I know
Okay.
what Bragman's is too, but I used to go to Cooperman's until they closed,
Okay.
you know. But there used to be a fish restaurant, used to be called Belmont Seafood. Now, for a long time, it was down on Belmont Avenue, but for another time, it was right on the corner of South 10th Street and Springfield Avenue. Let me
Hmm.
tell you, brother, I ain't had fish yet
Yeah.
that was good as the fish that I had at Belmont. I was brokenhearted when they
Yeah.
closed. And like unlike other places, you used to be able to go there, and this was just a corner joint. It
Yeah.
wasn't like they didn't have a big restaurant or anything. It was a corner joint.
Hmm.
You could go in there and pick your fish out. Like Whitey's, I don't know about now. Maybe we done fished out the ocean. I like whiting, right? But you could go and pick a large, a medium, or a small fish.
Hmm.
They'd be right there, with the flour and everything prepared, ready to go into the fryer.
Yes.
And you could man the fish, brother. I haven't had fish like that since they closed. I think they stayed open maybe almost until the late 80s, early 90s. But they're gone now. It's some kind of fried chicken joint there now. But that was the best fish and the best potato salad.
Yeah.
Nobody else made potato salad like them.
Hmm.
Like they had their potato salad was pink. You ever seen pink potato
Pink
salad?
potato salad. Okay.
Pink. It was pink because they used paprika, I think, in preparing the
Uh,
potato salad.
oh no, no, that's a
Man,
key ingredient. That's a key ingredient.
yes, man. I used to walk. I lived on 12th Street near 60th. I would walk to Belmont to
Hmm.
get my fish sandwich and carry it home, you know. And but yeah, I like corned beef too. I don't eat meat now. I haven't eaten meat since 1989,
Okay.
and I haven't eaten chicken since 1990.
Okay.
But I do eat fish. I do eat seafood.
Okay. Okay. And what about something you just do when it's just you, like an interest of yours, like when you're not out, advocating and working and everything else, just something that you like to do.
Well, what I like to do, I like to jog. I
Still run. Okay.
Yes, I like to jog. Now I'm not jogging now. I was jogging up until the 15th of December because I had to have a hernia operation.
Okay.
So since I had that operation, I haven't been running, but I'm healed now. So once the campaign is over, because the campaign really interrupts everything,
Hmm.
and once the campaign is over, I get back into my jogging. What I do on my birthday, which is December 24th, I do a long run.
Hmm.
And I started out about, I guess it was about 7 years ago, I started doing this. I started with 3 miles and increased it by a mile every year. So last year I ran, well, actually this December, because I didn't do it on my birthday. I did it before my operation, which was the 15th of December. So I must have done it around the 13th
Okay.
of December. I did like 10 miles. I go over to Brookdale Park
Hmm.
and I jog around the track, so I did 40 laps
Okay.
around the track at Brookdale and did 10 miles. Um, in the old days, I could run through the streets, but brother,
Yeah,
now
you
that
gotta be little more swift. You gotta be a little,
yeah,
you gotta be on
now
your toes. Yeah.
now that I'm 70, I gotta have a bathroom nearby.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I stay on that track because I
Mm.
don't want to get caught way out somewhere,
No, that's smart.
you know, because they have porta johns out there by the track,
Mm.
so I stay on now these days at 70. I stay on the track. But yeah, I like jogging really is the thing I like the most, and it's just that during this campaign season, I can't keep I can't work it in. I
Okay.
mean, you can at like a certain point, but there comes a certain point in the campaign when there's just so many things to do in a day for the campaign. You can't squeeze anything in.
Hmm.
You know,
Okay.
you can't squeeze anything in. So I'm just gonna cruise, until June 4th, the election, and then, hopefully I get a breather if I win the election. You know, I'll get a breather during the month of July, then kick it back up in August and get back on my schedule so I can do my long run for my 71st birthday.
That's all right. Yeah, no, that's all right. Speaking things here, you have any motto or mantra that you live by?
What do I live by? Well, the motto, the People's Organization for Progress has two
Hmm.
slogans that are our official slogan. One is Frederick Douglass, if there is no struggle, there is no progress.
Hmm.
I guess I pretty much live by that one.
Okay.
And the second slogan is power to the people.
Okay.
So those are the two slogans that you could say, yeah, I guess you could say I live by those, because all of my activity right now involves that.
Mm. Yeah. Best part about being Lawrence Hamm.
Well, the thing that I'm happy about most are my three daughters. I
Hmm.
have three daughters and a grandson.
Good stuff. Yes.
I'm a grandpa now.
That's all right.
Uh, I have three daughters. They are all doing well. My oldest daughter, Laini, is a nurse. She's been a nurse for 21 years. She works at hospitals in Camden and Philadelphia. She lives down Cherry Hill.
Okay.
My second daughter, my middle daughter, Nia, is a television reporter.
Hmm.
She's been in television for, oh my goodness, almost 20 years. Let's see, not quite 20, definitely 15 years.
Okay.
She's been in television and in media. She graduated, all my daughters are college graduates. All of them graduated from Rutgers University in New Brunswick. Um, Nia has degrees
Hmm.
from Rutgers and Columbia. She got her
Okay.
master's in journalism at Columbia. My youngest daughter, Imani, she has 2 degrees, both from Rutgers. She has her BA and she has an MPA, a master's in public administration from Rutgers. And they're all doing well. They're all out on their own. Now Nia is the daughter that got married.
Okay.
She married a wonderful young man, Jason Clark, and they a year and a half ago they had a son, Eli, which is my first grandchild.
That's all
And
right.
so
Congrats.
yeah, so that brings me a lot of happiness that
Hmm.
my children, you look out on your children and they're doing well. They still The youngest one still asks dad for money, even though she got a good job. You
Yeah.
know, she lives better than I do. She be asking dad for
Mm.
money, but it's my child, so I'm just glad I'm in a position where I can help her.
Okay.
You know, uh, that's the. I think that's one of the things that, at a personal level, that's the thing I'm most happy about. That my daughters, are doing well. You
Mm.
know, uh, yeah, because it could be different. I could
Yeah.
have a different story. You know
Yes.
what I'm saying?
Hmm. Now, at this point in your life, as far as the young age of 70 here, what would you just that 18-year-old Lawrence Ham, that senior in high school, what advice would you give that Lawrence Ham?
Oh, I would have told him to keep going. He was on the right track. The
Hmm.
senior. It was the senior at Princeton,
Okay.
that Lawrence Ham, that if I could go back, I would tell him finish his graduate work,
Okay.
because I was in a doctoral program at Princeton
Hmm.
and I was almost halfway through it.
Hmm.
But, you know, I had separated and eventually had a divorce
Hmm.
with my first wife.
Hmm.
And that had a pretty um, taxing effect on me. And I, for a minute, I just lost all desire to continue at Princeton because, you know, graduate level work is very intense at any university, at any university.
Hmm.
And, once we separated, all the chaos that comes with that and all the emotion that comes with that, I let it get the best of me and I did not finish my graduate work. So if I could go back, I would go back right there. I would
Okay.
go back to the summer of 1980 and say, sir, you need to get that doctoral degree
Mm.
because it will help you,
Mm.
you know. And so that's the one big regret that I have. That's a major regret. I also regret not having been able to run for Princeton University track and cross country teams. You know, I regret that, but there was nothing I could really do about it. You know,
Okay.
I had to work. I mean, when I went back to Princeton,
You was a parent, you was a husband.
yes, I was a dad and I was a husband. And
Hmm.
as much as I wanted to run, I had other things that had to be done. And I also had the challenge to finish Princeton the second time. You know what I'm saying? I went back. People say he'll never go back.
Right.
And
Right.
then once I went back, they said he'll never graduate.
Hmm.
you know, so I had to be like
You locked in.
focused on
Yeah.
that, and lock that down, and get that undergraduate degree. And I'm glad that I did that. I'm glad that's one of the right things I did. One of the
Hmm.
few of the right things that I did, was to get my undergraduate degree. I went on eventually. I got another degree, MBA, Master's in Business Administration,
Hmm.
but not from Princeton,
Okay.
um, but from another institution.
Hmm.
While I was employed, they had a tuition assistance program for the company that I worked for, and I was able to use that to get my master's degree in business administration.
Okay.
So, kind of, kind of made up for it. I did get that secondary. Most people don't know. They never imagined that I have a master's degree in business administration of all things, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
most people wouldn't know that. Or it wouldn't cross their mind. They
Mhm.
think it's probably all politics, you know. Um, But the those are the two places, I had a pretty, even with the bad things that happened, I had a I was pretty much on track for the most part.
Okay.
Uh, it was really when I was in my well, I went back. I was 20 when I went back to Princeton. So, and I was 24 when I finished undergraduate work. So
Hmm.
it's really around there, and I was still going to school. I mean, they made me an offer and I accepted it. People don't know, I actually taught at Princeton.
Hmm.
As a graduate student, I was a TA, a teaching assistant
Okay.
to a professor in the politics department, Dwayne Lockhart. And, his class was one of the required, like if you got a degree in politics from Princeton, just like other universities, you get a degree, there's like a core set of courses you have to have in order,
Hmm.
so state and local government was like one of the core courses. So he had 100 students taking his class, and he was in his 70s and had Parkinson's, you know. So the class would be divided into, say, 4 precepts, right? Precept, you have your lecture where
Hmm.
everybody comes in to hear the lecture. Then you have your precept where everybody comes in to discuss the lecture and the readings,
Hmm.
right? He had 4 precepts. I had 3 of them. I had
Yeah.
to do 3 of his precepts,
Hmm.
as his TA.
Hmm.
And I had to lecture to the whole class, you know. And I actually enjoyed that work. I could have, I probably could have been a college professor, but I was also kind of, I was a little taken aback by the amount of work that was involved. We had these preset ideas of what a college professor does, right? Let me tell you, if I had 3 precepts, I had 75 students.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when there was a midterm, 75 midterms.
Hmm. Yeah.
When there was a final, 75 finals. Every course you got to produce a paper, 75 papers. And them students at Princeton, I couldn't write like on their paper, good job, B plus. Oh no, you
Hmm.
never get away. You wouldn't get away with that.
Yeah.
You better have either some written or typed comments
Hmm.
on each student's paper, or they'll go complaining to the department chairman. You know, it's not like high school. Very good. B plus, very good.
Nah, I understand. And just for transparency's sake, Mr. Ham, I'm actually a college professor. So as you're saying that, I just
So
got
you know what I'm talking
yeah,
about, right?
yeah. So that's why I'm just kind of just laughing as you're saying it.
Man,
Yeah.
it was like factory work.
Yeah.
The way I was working,
Yeah.
I was like, this is
Yeah.
not what I thought being a college professor was going to be like.
Yeah.
No, man, you gotta have tenure and everything else before you can just come in and give a lecture and
Mhm.
let your TAs handle all the work.
Right. Right. Nah, nah, funny stuff here. Now, question as far as I know you lost your dad early on in life here, but just in general, what would your parents, what would they say about
I think they would be happy. I think
you?
they would be proud of me. My mother, from time to time, she was always concerned about my safety
Hmm.
because when I was on the board of education, I had threats on my life.
Yeah.
I had people I was at gunpoint where I thought people were going to kill me.
Hmm.
I mean, much of this is in the book, and my poor mother, I mean, people would send threatening letters in the mail. all kind of stuff. I mean, I was indicted
Mm-hmm.
on gun charges. I never owned a gun, but I was set up, you know, and I was indicted. I was on
Yeah.
trial
Yeah.
for gun charges. I was investigated for draft dodging. You know, when I was appointed to the board, Anthony Imperial, you know, he probably was Newark's biggest racist. You know, got the state attorney general to investigate me because they thought I had failed to register for the draft.
Mm.
I mean, all kind of stuff, you know. And then, like, not to mention the things I was doing, you know, like one time we had a board meeting and the students came, complained. They said the teachers, the principal won't let them bring the red, black, and green flag in school, you know. So I'm on the board. I make a motion that that students be permitted to bring the red, black, green flag to school. It be as a teaching tool, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Moved, seconded. The majority of board members voted for it. The next day, all hell broke loose.
Mm-hmm.
My mother came home, sitting in front of TV, watching her stories on television. All of a sudden, the program is interrupted. This guy, his last name was Love. He was the vice president of public affairs, and he was Black. He was speaking against me for trying to replace the American flag with the red, black, and green flag. You can read about this if you look up Lawrence Hamm.
Mm-hmm.
If you Google Lawrence Hamm Black Liberation Flag, stuff will come up about it. This was like quite a controversy. Baraka, the father, Baraka told me he was in Tanzania. Said he heard about it in
I
Tanzania. He
heard
was in
about it out there.
Africa,
Yeah.
you know? So I was under like constant threat, brother. We was at a board meeting one time in the white section in North Ward of Newark. Them parents tried to rush the stage and attack me because I refused to stand to salute the American flag.
Mm-hmm.
Like they all just got up out their seats and rushed the stage. They had to end the board meeting. They had to smuggle the board members out of the school. You know, it was always something.
And
So
that's negligence too on a lot of people in society here. If they want to do their homework on, everything from the national anthem, they're singing away, not knowing Francis Scott Key, his background, and the
he
third
was
and
a
fourth
slave
stand,
master.
the third and
He was
fourth
a slave
stanzas
master.
talking about killing slaves in those stanzas
Yes.
that they leave out, but people want to act like that doesn't exist. No, I totally understand where you come from.
Yes, sir, brother. Let me tell you something. That period I had on the board,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna tell you something. When my term was up, I was ready to come to Princeton. I was ready. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not because I was just ready for arrest. Like Princeton would be arrest for me from what I was doing on that board of education. I was ready to go back to like I was I was almost happy that I lost the election when I ran for city council
Mm-hmm.
because I knew if I had won the election, I wouldn't have went back to Princeton.
Yeah.
You know, I was happy. I'm like, I need a rest. I need a rest. Man, I'm looking forward to a rest at Princeton. Them Black students was waiting for me. They was waiting.
Mm.
It was like, we want you to give a talk about education and Black liberation. I mean, I just got back,
Yes.
you know? And so, my mother, she was concerned about my safety, but I think generally she would be proud of me. I mean, would she have wanted more? She probably would have wanted more, but
Mm.
I think she would have been proud of me. I think
Yeah.
my father would have too. My father, one of the memories I have of my father was a truck driver.
Okay.
I'm talking about Lawrence Hamm Sr. now. He was a truck driver. he drove Mack trucks for a living. And sometimes he would park the truck out like on Ridgewood Avenue, right? And he had friends. And back in the day, they had names like Big Six. He had friends like that, you know, and him and his friends would be standing around. And my father would say, Bootsy, come over here. That's what because I liked cowboy boots when I was a kid. He said, come over here. And my father would take out, he have a big ring of keys, right? And he would say, Bootsy, pick out the key to my truck. And all his friends would be looking to see if I could find the right key, right? Mm-hmm. But I knew his truck, the Mack truck, had a bulldog on the hood, right? A silver bulldog on it. The Mack, back then they were red and they had a silver bulldog on the hood. And so I knew to look for the key that had a bulldog on it.
Okay.
And I picked the key out. And my father, see, my boy is smart. He knew what key it was, right? But I knew it was the key that had the bulldog on it because he drove with the truck with the bulldog. Mm-hmm. And my father would take me in the Ridgewood bar and he would buy me an orange soda. And back in the day, if you was in a bar and you bought a soda, it was a fountain soda, not a bottle soda. And the fountain soda was sweeter than the bottle soda, depending on the mix. But generally in that bar, if I did something like that, something good, my father would be proud of. He'd take me there and buy you a soda, And, he passed when I was 4 years old. The other thing I did not mention, I did not talk about, is that when I was 44 years old, I learned that I was adopted.
Okay.
I learned I was adopted at 44. Mm. And shortly thereafter, I was able to meet my birth mother, Teresa Burton.
Okay.
And I was born, like I said, I was born in Washington, but I was born to Teresa Burton. And my birth name was Anthony Leroy Burton.
Okay. Being 44, I mean, kind of impact that's had on you, just even at that point in your life. Did you find out by accident or?
No, it wasn't by accident. What happened was Teresa and her brother wanted to find me. And they went to the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Okay.
And the Make-A-Wish Foundation helped them. They didn't find me. I don't know why. I mean, I was pretty much a public figure at 44. I mean, I was in the newspapers at 44, but they couldn't find me. They found my mother, Grace. And this is unusual because Grace was in a nursing home.
Okay.
She had owned a house on Tremont Avenue in Newark, but she had to liquidate all that in order to get the nursing home care. And they found her, and I would go to see my mother 2-3 times a week. And I went to see my mother on my birthday, my 44th birthday, and I had my wife and my kids with me. And we are leaving after the visit. My mother says, when you come back, I got something to tell you. She meant the next visit. I said, now, how you gonna keep me in suspense like that,
Right.
And so I said, well, what is it you have to tell me? And then she said, I was adopted. And I said, adopted? I said, why did you wait 44 years to tell me? And she said, I was afraid that if I told you, you would stop loving me. I never forget that.
Yeah.
And I was blessed, brother, to have Grace Hamm as my mother that raised me. If all children had the mother that I had, we'd be in better shape. I don't know how much better, but I know we'd be in better shape.
Better shape, yeah.
My mother, Grace, was totally dedicated to me. When I came home, dinner was always being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
I had dinner at the kitchen table. We ate in the kitchen. I never missed a meal. In fact, I was fat when I was a kid. They used to call me Fat Ham. When I was a kid, my mother was always home. And if she wasn't home, we knew where she was at.
Mm-hmm.
My mother went to work every day. We were poor, but let me tell you something. I didn't know I was poor until I went to Princeton. Because to know poverty, you got to have something to compare it to, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But I always had clothes. My mother always bought me school clothes, a new suit for Easter,
Mm-hmm.
go to church on Easter,
Mm-hmm.
school clothes. I was clean, you know. There were very few things that I asked for that my mother wouldn't try to give me. My poor mother, who was a seamstress in a cleaners, somehow bought a piano, a real piano, a upright piano, not an electric. We didn't have electric pianos back then. I wish we did, because I know my mother must have spent a lot of money. We had a piano in the house in our second floor apartment, South 12th Street in Newark, a real piano, a Wurlitzer, a new piano. My mother was always there for me, always, always, always. I never came home like, asked my grand, where's mommy? If my mother was going out, had somewhere to go out, she's like, I'm going out. I'll be back at such and such a time. I was blessed, brother.
Yeah.
I swear.
Sound like it. Definitely sounds like it. Mr. Hamm, thank you this even for the last part and just even our time, just as far as you just sharing, just to hear a little bit of your walk and, being a Jersey guy, Essex County guy, all that stuff that ties into it here. But you don't live a life for a few people here, as far as just what you've done or what you continue to do here. So I just wanted to say thank you. I mean, this has been a complete honor of mine just to have opportunity to listen to you, for our time together here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really,
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. And, if there's anything I could do to help, not a problem. But in the same breath here, you don't need my help. I mean, you done quite all right on your own here. But no, best wishes with things coming up here, and congrats on everything that you've done as well too.
Thank you, my brother Edmund. Thank you so much.
Nah,
This was an
definitely.
honor for me to be on your program, to listen to me gab. For how
Nah,
many
nah,
hours?
nah.
We've been
I
on it
nobody keeping track.
3 hours, man.
Nobody keeping track. Nobody keeping track.
How that time go by so fast?
It's supposed to. It's supposed to. It's supposed to. Not like this has been a joy. This has been a joy. Nah, thank you for giving me this opportunity here. But definitely thank you.
All right, brother.
All right,
Thank you.
I'll be in touch, and I definitely love to meet you.
All right, we will. And we'll
Okay.
meet soon. All right.
All right, be well.
You too. Take care.
Oh, take care.
Bye-bye.
Wow, the joys of doing this here. Just have an opportunity, to talk to Mr. Hamm, hopefully soon to be, U.S. Senator Hamm. Wow. These continue. I get excited just doing these, have an opportunity to meet any and everybody that I do this here. So, Mr. Hamm, thank you for everything and just sharing a little bit of your walk with me here. With that said, here I'm gonna step away. I put my hand over my heart. That means I feel you. Yeah.